The BBC. The Supreme Court ruling gives clarity, but now comes the difficult part. Now, what is this talking about here? This is about this new ruling inside of the UK where they've decided what a woman is. So let's go ahead and take a look at this article, see what they have to say. A victory for common sense or devastating. The contrasting reactions to the statement by 5 Supreme Court judges that legally the term woman means a biological woman. Okay. Well, what did you think it meant before? I mean, I don't know. I'm not English, so I don't know the laws there. And it's kind of odd to me that the Supreme Court did this because they are all about the woke ideology in England, as far as I understand. Like England and Australia apparently have gone off the deep end with this. I think it's bad here in the United States. I hear it's worse there. It's worse in Northern Europe in general, from what I understand. Denmark, Norway, Sweden. Those places are just like super woke, feminist ridiculousness. Behind the different responses lie many of the often bitter and vitriolic arguments that set the country on a long, tricky road towards Wednesday's unambiguous judgment. Unambiguous judgment. All right. Well, if it is the case that they're saying that only biological women can be women, then what about people who do actually transition, who do go through the full medical process and take their hormones every single day? I'm curious how you define them or how that's going to work out legally. When the highest court in the land ruled that sex is a binary, meaning legally it should be interpreted as referring to either a biological man or a biological woman, it was providing clarity that had been missing from such conversations for years. Words like woman and sex had become loaded with different meanings depending on your viewpoint. Language that for centuries had been uncomplicated and accepted became a battleground. Yeah, we've known what a woman is forever. Are there exceptions to this? Yes. The thing is, exceptions don't necessarily make the rule. And even those exceptions would be like one way or the other. Outwardly expressing themselves as one way or the other. Now, is it going to come to a point with human technology that every time a person is born, we have a genetic test that we can run them through and determine how exactly male and female that they are? And, of course, 99% of those people are going to be 100% either male or female. Then there's the rare exception, which is less than 1% actually, that we're going to be able to say, oh, look, they're different, but they still are going to present one way or another. They're still going to grow up and feel like they are, a male or a female. The judgment is intended to draw a line under that. It argues that for the Equality Act to be consistent, the term woman has to mean a biological woman. That does not include biological males, even if they have certificates to say they have changed gender. Interesting. That is where it's at. And like I was saying a moment ago, what do you do about those people who transition? Now, before we continue, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Make sure that you're still subscribed. YouTube does unsubscribe people. You can find me on Rumble and on Twitter. Let's get back to this article. This means that where there are, for instance, women-only spaces, then a biological man who identifies as a woman cannot use them. That includes changing rooms, toilets, women's refuges, single-sex hospital wards, and anywhere designated as for one sex only. It didn't say prisons on here. I think I still got an in if I break the law. How much change that will mean in practice will be set out in detailed guidance. Until then, there remains lots of questions and some confusion, and that is challenging in an area where views are so polarized. The polarization of views is there's a bunch of stupid people who think that men can be women and women can be men if they just so choose. And there's a bunch of sane people who are like, yeah, no, that's not how biology works. You can feel any way you want to. Doesn't mean that you are the thing that you feel like you are. From jubilance to devastation, it was Baroness Faulkner, the woman who heads the watchdog that regulates equality laws, who described the judgment as a victory for common sense. She added it was only such a victory if you recognize trans people, that they exist, they have rights, and their rights must be respected. Okay, I mean, people understand that there are people out there who think they are the opposite gender. We get this. And I don't know that there's anybody out there saying that you deserve to have fewer human rights, unless, of course, you say, oh, you have a right to use whichever bathroom you want to. That's a human right, and we're going to restrict that. that's not a human right to use whichever bathroom you want to. So ridiculous. She also told the BBC about the abuse she had faced since taking over as chair of the Equalities and Human Rights Commission in 2020. She had previously told the Times that women had the right to question gender identity, and that had led to some very personal abuse from those who disagreed with her. Yeah, don't abuse the people who believe this stuff. Speak out against them. We don't need, if you have to fight, if you have to literally like attack people either verbally or physically to get your point across, you probably are on the losing end of that. That's why we see all these people who are bombing the Teslas. It's like, yeah, you're the loser in this. If you have to actually destroy property of a person who is creating that property and not breaking the law and doing so, yeah, you're probably on the wrong side of that. I know there's revolutions and all that stuff, but Elon Musk is just trying to make a buck with his car, so maybe don't destroy that. It'd be like going to Ford and destroying their cars, or going to Chevy and destroying their cars. It's the same thing. Oh, you disagree with the owner of Chevy? I bet you do. I bet you disagree with the owner of Chevrolet. I bet you disagree with him on something. So you're going to go around to Chevy dealerships and start bombing the cars? This is so ridiculous. I had not realized how difficult the job would be, she said. It has taken a toll, but if you're in public life, you have to take that. We demand trans futures. Okay. The second response to the judgment was from the trans rights campaign group, Transactual, which described the Supreme Court judgment as devastating. Oh, man, it's just devastating. One of its activists, Jane Fay, told the BBC the judgment felt like a physical body blow and that it was as if people were being excluded from society. I'm sorry. You're excluded from society because you don't get to use the bathroom of your choice. This problem has been solved largely in where I'm from in Illinois, where they just have the family bathrooms everywhere you go. So whatever you decide to be that day, you can just go ahead and use that bathroom. It's just one bathroom fits all, basically. They will typically have a women's room, and they'll have a men's room, and then they'll have a family bathroom. Or there's places you could go where it's just all family. Every single bathroom is just, they got like 5 bathrooms, and they're all family. They're all little stalls that you can go into, and there's a toilet and a sink in there. And knock yourselves out. Now, in England, this is going to be a much more difficult situation, in Europe in general, because of the population in that part of the world. It's so high and there's so little extra space. There's wide open spaces here in the United States, so we can do that here. Today, we're feeling very alone, she said. What does this mean? Can I use this loo? Can I do that? Can I do the other? You could be the thing that you were born as. I know that a lot of these people have tried to resolve their feelings of misplacement in their bodies to no avail. So then the solution becomes, hey, we'll just give you these hormones and, we'll change your body if you so decide. But how is it that you're born and you develop your genitals and reproductive system alongside of the rest of your body, and yet you feel like you're in the wrong body? That doesn't make sense. People are like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. So in contrast, the women's groups who fought the case feel vindicated and jubilant. Helen Joyce, the director of advocacy at the campaign group's Sex Matters, says, the ruling is incredibly important for the half of humanity who need single-sex spaces. Women's groups argue that the ruling is important for reasons of privacy, safety, dignity, and discrimination. Wow, imagine that. Yes, women need to have private spaces where they can let their guard down and not have to worry about a man harming them. And whether or not that harm would happen regularly, would happen frequently, I guess, that's neither here nor there, because women are going to feel like, okay, I'm in this position where I'm going to be vulnerable and a man could take advantage of me. So the Supreme Court case was brought by a group called For Women Scotland. It wanted to overturn Scottish legislation, which said 50% of members on public boards should be women. And trans women were included in that definition. Okay, well, there's your problem. I mean, you're going to say, hey, we need to have 50% of members on public boards. No, you don't. That's females don't need to be in public boards and all that stuff. It's fine. The group lost its case in Scotland's highest court, but appealed to the UK Supreme Court. The case was heard towards the end of last year. What we want was clarity in the law. When something is described as a single-sex service, a single-sex space, that this relates to biology. Yeah, that tends to be the case. I don't know. Beginnings of the culture wars. Over time, the arguments over how a woman is defined had become increasingly angry, bitter, and divided, because the stakes were high for all involved. For transgender people who say they often face victimization and harassment, the battles were rooted in attempts to win better legal protection. All right, people are going to be victimized no matter what they are, and they're going to be harassed no matter what they are. I get harassed, I get victimized. I'm a white male. So do you see me going on and whining about this, or do I just get on with my life? If I want to whine about something, if I want to complain about something, I'll come into my channel here and be like, okay, this is not right. But this channel is devoted to being anti-woke. So if I'm complaining about something, you better bet that I'm going to be tying it into wokeness and how it is a woke issue. You don't hear me complaining about, I don't know, what are some things I could complain about? You don't hear me complaining about like the diets in the United States, really, right? The only thing I'll talk about regarding the U.S. food and diets is the body positivity stuff. That's it. Because this channel is not devoted to the poor quality of food in the United States, or how much processed food we eat in the United States, or how the food is grown in the United States. It's not about that. There's plenty of things you could complain about in that realm, I'm sure. But this channel isn't about that. So legal gender recognition is essential for trans people to enjoy the full spectrum of rights each of us is entitled to, including safety, health, and family life. The question of how to achieve legal recognition rose to prominence in 2022 when two judgments at the European Court of Human Rights found the UK was breaching human rights by failing to legally recognize transgender people in their acquired gender. This eventually led to the 2005 Gender Recognition Act, which allowed a trans person to apply for a gender recognition certificate. This recognized their preferred gender rather than their biological sex, allowing official documents like birth certificates to be changed to reflect that. That is a bit extreme. You're gonna change the birth certificate so you know that you're born as one thing, and then you're going to have that changed to something different later on. But it was a long-winded process requiring two doctors to sign it off and for the person to live in their acquired gender for at least 2 years. Only about 8,000 people have applied for the GRC since they came into being, according to the government's figures. Well, this seems reasonable. If you truly are the opposite gender and you want to live that way, then yeah, you should be able to prove that by living that way and then getting doctors to agree with you as well. It's like, I don't see that as unreasonable at all. Campaigners began calling for the process to be simplified in a response to a 2020 government consultation on amending the GRA. Stonewall, the LGBTQ plus rights organization, called for a move to a demedicalized and straightforward legal gender recognition process. Yeah, so in other words, I can just say that I am the opposite gender and then fill out some paperwork, and then I'm the opposite gender. Gradually, these calls gained momentum. In 2022, the Scottish government introduced a law that would allow people to self-identify in their desired gender. This was later blocked by the UK government and eventually dropped as the Scottish policy. As the rights of trans people were being debated, women's groups started pushing back about what that meant for biological women. The meaning of the words like women and sex took on new significance if someone who was biologically male had a certificate that identified them as a woman for legal purposes. Under the 2010 Equality Act, sex was a protected characteristic, and so was gender reassignment. With the very meaning of those categories in dispute, legal experts said it set the protections of one group against the protections of another. The complexities mean courts and tribunals have frequently been called on to arbitrate. And that might be the solution here. You just have to go to court and decide whether or not you are a female or a male, depending on how you were born and how you present now and how you act now. And social media has often provided a starting point for angry disputes, connecting and amplifying voices, and in many cases leading to more entrenched viewpoints. It had become a culture war. How the debate began to change. In 2019, tax expert Maya Forstater lost her job because she tweeted that she did not believe people could change their sex. She said biological sex was immutable and not the same as gender identity. Yeah, that's true though. We don't have the technology to literally change someone's biological sex at this point. We can make you a reasonable facsimile of the opposite gender, but you're never going to be that opposite gender. As a result, her work contract was not renewed. Her employer said it wanted to build an inclusive workplace. She lost her case at an employment tribunal, but an appeal court judge later ruled that gender-critical beliefs were protected by the Equalities Act. She was awarded £100,000 compensation for unfair dismissal. There you go. It was a high-profile battle through tribunals and courts which put employers' policies on inclusion under the spotlight and raised questions about whether, by protecting the rights of one group, another was being discriminated against. Forstater went on to set up the campaign group Sex Matters and was among those celebrating outside the Supreme Court on Wednesday. There have been other similar cases brought against employers since then. Sex Matters lists 11 settled or ongoing cases on its website, but other high-profile cases have also shaped the broader debate. In March 2020, 23-year-old Kira Bell took legal action against the only children's NHS gender clinic, saying she should have been challenged more by medical staff over her decision to transition to a male whilst a teenager. Yeah. I don't know. In England, in the UK, it's my understanding that the medical system is much more socialized than it is here in the United States. So why is it that these NHS doctors are promoting these gender transitions? Because I know in the United States, it's a money-making machine. You got a cash cow when you get a transgender person because they have to receive treatment for that for the rest of their lives. But in the NHS, it's so subsidized, isn't it? Does that matter? I don't know. Maybe if you're from England, you can go down in the comments, let me know. No. Although she eventually lost her case, it started a chain reaction which led to a shakeup of gender services for children and young people. And in 2021, the Sussex University professor Kathleen Stock quit her job after being accused of having transphobic views. She had published a book that questioned whether gender identity is more significant than biological sex. That's all it takes. You know, the UK, you're going after people for freedom of speech, man. You guys, I used to be like, yeah, man, maybe I'll move to Europe someday. Maybe I'll live in the UK. Yeah, I speak the language, so yeah, I don't think I can go there now. I don't think you guys are going to let me go there because of the things I say on my channel. I would have to stop this channel. It's pretty messed up what you're doing over there, not allowing people to speak. Let's skip ahead here to the Supreme Court ruling in practice. Crucially, the ruling provides a clear framework for what equality laws mean. The EHRC says it is working at pace to update its guidance and expects that to be ready by the summer. It has already made it clear that if a single-sex space, like a toilet or changing room, is women only, that means biological males who identify as women should not use it. Well, what are they supposed to use then? That's my question. Because there are these people that exist. It says instead that trans people should use their powers of advocacy to campaign for third spaces such as unisex toilets, which is what we have here in the Midwest. And like I said, is there space for that in England? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that there probably is. I don't think the entire country is covered with urban sprawl, but still, you do have a space crunch over there. And it has said it will pursue the NHS if it does not follow the latest ruling. Health service guidance on single-sex wards currently say that trans people should be accommodated according to their presentation, the way they dress, and the name and pronouns they currently use. Right? I mean, think about it for a second here. If you want to enforce this law, okay, enforce this law. I'm not going to stop you. But if I'm walking down the street and I look like I do right now, but I was born a woman and I walk into the men's bathroom, is anybody going to say anything to me? No. They're going to be like, oh, that's a dude. Okay. I used to get accused of being a woman a lot. When I was 20, I grew my hair long and people would see me be like, oh, hey, ma'am, or hey, miss, or whatever. And I'm like, excuse me? What? Do you not look at the body of the person you're talking to? You just look at the hair. That determines whether or not somebody's male or female. Okay. Currently, this allows trans women to be offered beds on women-only wards. The NHS says its policy is under review. Former Supreme Court Judge Lord Sumption says that while the ruling means organizations can exclude trans women from women-only facilities, they are not necessarily obliged to do so. He told Radio 4's PM program that in sport, for example, it would be down to individual governing bodies to decide who is allowed to compete in women's sports. The athlete thing it should just be You don't get to participate in sports if you're trans. It's that simple. They could decide to allow trans women to compete on the same basis as biological women. Some sporting authorities do. Although I think that in light of the latest judgment, they would be wise to say so expressly in their rules. British Transport Police has been the first body to actually change its policies. It says strip searches for people in custody will be carried out by officers of the same biological sex. Yeah, that could be a problem. So I don't talk about the women in policing stuff very often, but it is my feeling that women should be in law enforcement. They should not be field officers, but we need them for dealing with female criminals. My hometown, where I'm from, a woman claimed she was violated by the chief of police, like fully all the way. Now, she did not follow legal recourse for this because she's probably not going to win that, and that's going to be a problem for her long term, but that was her claim. So I don't want to see that happening to anybody. I want women to be examining women, especially I want to be strip searching women, especially if those people present as women. If you've had the full surgery and everything, you could still be seriously violated. That was an episode of SVU. That was the last episode I watched. This guy was presenting as a female. I don't know if he had surgery. I don't think that he had surgery yet, but he was a man, so they put him into a men's prison and he got like ganged. I'm like, yeah, I can't watch this show. That's just horrifying. So I stopped watching that show. That was, I think, over 20 years ago. So I don't want to see people getting hurt. And it looks like the UK has some work to do to figure out how they're going to deal with this. Just make your bathrooms, the easy things, make your bathrooms unisex, locking door in each one, so you don't have that problem. Fitting rooms are going to be a different story. Locker rooms are going to be a different story. I don't know how you're going to do those unless you're going to want to build a third and it's going to get down to craziness. Like, how many different genders are there and how many different locker rooms do we need? I want to share this meme with you. All right, the meme is of a woman and it says, if a vagina doesn't make you a woman, how come lipstick, high heels, and a handbag do? Yeah. If you really want to follow this ideology, then you need to stop being Schrodinger's progressive. Right? You can't just pick and choose when it benefits you. When you want to make a stink about something, you're progressive. When it doesn't benefit you, you're not. Look, I understand there's lots of reasons to be outraged about a lot of things in this world, but you're going to run into this a lot, where you run into hypocrisy, where you run into things that kind of butt heads with each other. Vaginas are an indication of what a woman is. If you were born with one, you're probably a woman. You might be a hermaphrodite, but you're probably a woman if you were born with an internal reproductive organs. That's just kind of how it works. Yeah, there's exceptions, but those people who are born with vaginas typically feel like a woman. They might feel like a male because they might have both. They might actually have both, and they feel like a male instead of a female. Okay, fine. Those are the rare exceptions. And I probably wouldn't recognize one of them walking down the street as the opposite gender. I'd be like, oh, that dude's a dude. Well, yeah, actually, I have both. Oh, okay, well, you have both then, but you act like a dude, so whatever. Go into the men's room. So it's kind of ridiculous stuff like this that they're going to be running into quite a bit, where people who are forcing themselves to be somewhere in between male and female are going to be like, hey, you're violating my rights. Because, hey, there's these people out there that do exist in between. There's legitimate people out there who are somewhere in between. So I'm one of them because I was born in the wrong body. Yeah, this is stupid stuff. But anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.